All right. Hey, welcome to another episode of Coach P's Perspective. Man, I am pumped. Today I have Steven Sashen on here, who is the founder, CEO of Xero Shoes, which are my favorite shoes. I'm actually wearing some right now, the Xero Prio, which is my everyday go-to training shoe and teaching and coaching and everything else. Steven, you are, looking at your backgrounds, I would say like a man of many talents, many trades.
I would say a guy who was who they hadn't invented Ritalin for yet.
All right. Well, you've been able to utilize that very, very well. So,
and by the way, I've got to say, here's the irony: you're wearing a pair of our shoes. This is what I'm wearing.
you know what? Before we start recording, I was going to ask you because I would almost guarantee that you were probably barefooted.
Let's just say I'm barefoot so often that the other day I was in Costco, I was in line at the pharmacy, and when I wear shoes, I wear mismatched colors so people notice. So okay. I'm wearing shoes, and the guy behind me says, "Hey, your shoes don't match," and the pharmacist says, "He's wearing shoes."
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So, well, I know that is a big part of the minimal shoe movement and no shoe. We're going to get into that in a little bit, which is awesome. By the way, that's a great marketing technique, wearing the mismatched shoes so people notice. Yeah,
do what I can.
Brilliant. So, all right, man. Well, let's just do this for those who are listening who have not been exposed to your awesome company yet. Let's start with your background. Where'd you grow up at? And I have a lot of coaches that listen to this. So maybe some of the sports that you did. I know you're a sprinter, but maybe some of the stuff growing up.
So I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, just outside of DC, and I was always, just like the fastest kid anyone knew for quite a while, through, kindergarten, elementary school, kind of stuff. When I was 7, I became a competitive diver, and I did that for 4 or 5 years. And then this is going to sound silly, at 11 or 12, I burned out. I was sort of tired of the whole game. And when I went to my first day at the middle school, the junior high school that I was at, the PE guys, there were 3 of them. They were doing some talk to all the incoming students about whatever we had to do, and we had to wear a jock strap and don't put it on your head or whatever they were saying. And then without saying anything, one of the coaches, one of the teachers, stands up very quietly, just stands behind the other 2 guys, does a standing backflip. And my next thought was, I want to be that guy. So this is a guy named Jack Leonard. He was a 5-time national and 3-time world tumbling champion, All-American Gymnast at Ohio State, one of the greatest teachers of all kinds I've ever met. He's one of these guys who could figure out what you were good at and then just maximized what you could do. Quick aside, like years after I graduated high school, I said to him, "How many other people did you ever teach this one particular move to, a move that I did?" He goes, "Nobody." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You were the one who could do it." And it was true. And he also didn't tell me that the year that I did it, 3 guys died trying it. So he was kind of very smart that way. Actually, wait, sorry. I had the craziest memory. So my senior year in high school, I was working with another coach as well. For evenings, a guy had a gym somewhere else. And one night, Jack was at this gym with us, training with this other coach. And the other coach just read me the riot act about all the things I couldn't do. And he said, you don't twist well, you don't do this. I mean, just had a whole list of things. And I remember walking into the locker room and just started crying. And Jack says, "So you need to know something." I said, "What?" He goes, "He's right." I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you can't do those things. You're not good at those things. But why did your scores go from 7s to 9.5s? Because here's the things you're awesome at. These are the things that nobody else can do. You're not wired for those. That's why we don't do those." And I mean, that just changed my life. So anyway, that said, I was an All-American Gymnast in high school. I also was running track. And by the time I was maybe in 10th, 11th grade, I'm not sure which, I was getting shin splints, and the track coach, and I'm going to use that word with air quotes, the track coach, he was a science teacher who they made coach track, who knew nothing about coaching track. He said to me, "So is there any time when the shin splints don't hurt?" I go, "Yeah, when I'm running." He goes, "Well, then keep running." And I remember thinking, "You're a moron." So I stopped sprinting and I started doing pole vault and long jump, which I did well at. And then EGADS. After that, then I moved to college, went off to college. I stopped doing gymnastics because I wanted to have a life. And I don't know what the hell I was doing after that, but I basically, I still kept doing gymnastics casually. Like I went to Duke, they had a women's team, but they didn't have a men's team. So I would work out with the women's team and their coach. Again, coach. Now, he was actually a fine coach, but I'm putting air quotes around that one because on the first day, I said, do me a favor. I'm going to do this one particular move, and you just stand there in case something goes wrong. And he ended up trying to spot me. And I ended up landing in a way that I just pulled like all the muscles in my lower back. I might have broken my spine at that time. I spent the next 2 weeks in bed on Vicodin and codeine. And years later, we were still friends. And I said, what were you thinking? He says, I was thinking, I've never heard of anyone on the planet who can do that move. So I thought you were just bullshitting me. So I was trying to get in there so you wouldn't kill yourself. And I screwed up. And so it's like, oops, live and learn. And then anyway, I kept doing gymnastics just casually till I was about 32 when I blew out my knee. And then I spent 15 years or 13 years trying to find something to do that I enjoyed until someone said to me, there's a master's track and field circuit. And I went, no, I did not know that. And so that's what got me back into sprinting when I was 45, which is 14 years ago. And here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's amazing. I love it. So I'm a wrestling coach, lifelong wrestler, college wrestler, but tell you what, a lot of my wrestlers, they naturally can do some tumbling. But when we get somebody that comes in with a tumbling background, their athleticism, their strength, their flexibility, their kinesthetic awareness is just off the charts.
So gymnastics is it's super, super wonderful. And I don't know one gymnast who hasn't come out with, something massively messed up. For me, it was my shoulder and my back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, it's a great background. Now let's jump over to Xero Shoes, your company. I want to know like the genesis. Where did this idea start? How did it get off the ground? So tell me about the beginning days.
Well, again, it started because I got back into sprinting at 45, and I spent the next 2 years just getting injured pretty much constantly. And a friend of mine who's a world champion cross-country runner said one day, why don't you try running barefoot and see if you learn anything? And what I learned, in short, was why I was getting injured and how to stop getting injured. And the gist is it was a form problem that I couldn't feel when I was in a shoe that essentially looked like this. Big padded motion control, arch support, kind of normal shoe. And when you're running barefoot, bad form hurts, good form feels great. And so I wanted that natural movement experience as much as I could have it because I felt the benefit of it. So I made a pair of sandals based on a 10,000-year-old design, just something to protect the bottom of your foot, something to hold it on your foot. I got some rubber from a shoe repair place. I got some cord from Home Depot, laced it up onto my foot, and that was it. And I made a pair for my wife who kind of patted me on the head. It's like buying your mother a baseball glove for Mother's Day. And she didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And I had a few other pairs that I made for some other runners. And then they told two friends and they told two friends. And I'd made about maybe 50 pairs of shoes. And a guy who was a barefoot running coach said, I have a book coming out on barefoot running. And if you had a website to treat this hobby of yours, this sandal making hobby, like an actual business, I could put you in the book. So I rush home. I pitched this incredible opportunity to my wife, who assures me it's a stupid idea that won't make any money, is a giant waste of time. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. So I waited till she went to bed before I built a website. And she kind of growled at me the next day. And I said, look, we were starting a search engine marketing business. I'd been an internet marketer for a long time. And I said, it'll be a case study. We can just show, it'll take like 3 months. I'll be able to dominate this market. And I was totally wrong. It only took me about 6 weeks. And what we thought might maybe be a car payment, if we were lucky, instantly and very quickly, that's kind of redundant, became our full-time job. By January 2010, we were, all in. And again, selling a do-it-yourself sandal making kit. And we started the business during a recession in the winter. And I think our first order was from someone in Minnesota where it was already snowing. And we thought, wow, somebody from Minnesota is ordering a pair of sandals, a kit, a DIY kit. Then there's a there to this. And soon thereafter, we were walking downtown in Boulder, Colorado, where I've been living, or where I was living. And a pack of teenage girls ran up to us and said, oh my God, those sandals are sick. Where do you get those? And it's like, hey, we got it. So we knew that there was going to be something meaningful there. And that's how it all began.
Yeah, which is an incredible story. There's been a big movement, of course, right, with minimalist shoes or barefoot running and barefoot shoes, those types of things. I'm pretty sure that exact same book that you were mentioning is the one that made me start looking that direction. And as a coach, I do wrestling, but I'm also a strength conditioning coach, and so I'm always looking at things, right? Hey, how can we move better, essentially? And so kind of started to try to discover those type of things. in the
Let
market.
me interrupt. Let me say something about that.
Yeah.
And I'll sum it up with this. There's a doctor at Harvard named Irene Davis. We were at a panel discussion together at the American College of Sports Medicine. I was on the panel, and she asked the other panelists, which included someone from Brooks and Adidas, was basically in the 60s and up until then, we were running in thin-soled running shoes. We were playing basketball in Chuck Taylors. We weren't getting the kind of injuries or the severity of injuries or the number of injuries we're seeing now. So she says, what problem were you trying to solve and why didn't it work? And they had no answer. So the thing we've got to remember is that what we're doing at Xero Shoes is fundamentally what human beings have been doing since the beginning of human beings in footwear. And the advent of, the modern athletic shoe is the new invention, is the new intervention. And they have no proof. And by no proof, I mean no proof that it's beneficial. In fact, when I'm just holding something up, it's like, if your foot is shaped like this toe box, this pointy toe box, it's not supposed to be. And it's only shaped like that because you've been squeezing your toes into something like that. And if you think about it, like from strength and conditioning, if you're going to drop and do push-ups, you don't squeeze your fingers together until you can't use them. You spread them apart because that gives you better balance and strength. Well, it's the same thing with your feet. So it's an amazing thing that what we're coming back to is what humans were doing for a very long time. And now, people act like we're the new thing. It's like, no. We're the old thing, just done better.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of functional fitness and functional strength conditioning in general is going back to some of these basic human principles that have been practiced for a long time that we have forgotten or neglected, or just said like, hey, here's the new modern, better thing. So we jump to it. Right. Yeah. So it's going in a great direction.
Well, there's even more to it. Like the padded arch supported. Well, let me back up. There's some research that I call the dumbest research ever done. And the dumbest research ever done is basically proving use it or lose it. So when it comes to footwear, there's research showing that just walking, wait, I'm going to grab a Xero shoe, just walking in a shoe like this. They didn't do the study with this shoe, but they did a study with, a different brand, but walking in a truly minimalist shoe that's flexible and lets your foot bend and flex and feel naturally builds intrinsic foot muscle strength as much as doing a foot strengthening exercise program. And, as a wrestler, or, even if you're benching, if you're squatting, if you're pulling, everything starts at the feet. And so having that foot strength is important. And again, we had to do research to prove that using your feet is good. Well, similarly, there's research showing they put the arch support in the shoes of healthy individuals, and within 12 weeks, they had lost 17% of the muscle mass in their feet. Really, do we need to prove the lose it part of use it or lose it? We all know you put your arm in a cast, it doesn't magically come out stronger. So, it's an amazing thing to see that what's going on is just this rewiring of people's brains. Because here's the crazy thing about let's use cushioning. So the research on cushioning is very interesting and very clear. It doesn't help. It simply doesn't help. The more cushioning, the better. It's not true. More cushioning is actually often worse because you end up using the cushioning or trying to, and it's never going to be as good as your muscles, ligaments, and tendons. But the shoe companies for the last 50 years, every couple of years, they come out and say, hey, here's our new magic cushioning technology. And everyone goes, I'm in. And it's like the boy who cried wolf, except they're crying cushioning. But in the boy who cried wolf, the villagers eventually got smart. And in the shoe companies that cried cushioning, the villagers seem to keep going back every time they say, here's our new thing. And the shoe companies have never said, by the way, our apologies for the crap we've been selling up until now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you, as someone who transitioned to a minimalist zero drop shoe a long time ago, I've tried to go back and wear cushioning shoes or shoes that it feels so uncomfortable. It feels so unnatural. It's not something
only because it is unnatural and it is uncomfortable.
Yep. So, all right. Your company's done phenomenal. So I want to talk about two things real quick. I want to ask you about marketing, because I believe that principles are principles. Once you know them, you can apply them to multiple places. So tell me a little bit about marketing and how you grow the company. And then I'll also love to hear your vision for Xero Shoes.
Oh, that's a big one. So the marketing thing is ultimately pretty simple. Part one is finding people who might be amenable to what you're doing. People are already talking about what you're doing, and offer something of value to them. When I started the company, I just made videos showing how to make these sandals from a do-it-yourself sandal making kit. And I gave away the whole farm. I showed people how to replicate my business, and a handful of people actually did. But I literally just gave it all away. And I had people who came up to me years later saying, I watched your videos. I made my own shoes. I've never bought anything from you. I said, great. I mean, the most important thing for me is spreading the word about natural movement and the value of natural movement. So if you got benefit from that, I'm all in. In fact, someone said, what would happen if, the big shoe companies did what you're doing? I said, then I won. I'm trying to convince people that natural movement is the better, obvious, healthy choice. If everyone else copies what I've done, I won. So that's part one in terms of marketing, is just finding where people are already gathering and talking and interacting about what you're doing, and just kind of engaging in the conversation, offering some value, or some entertainment. Entertainment can be value as well. The second thing is that you got to go past the people who already are hip to what you're doing to a new group of people, if what you're doing applies to them. And so when people ask me, who do you make your shoes for? I go, people with feet, preferably too, but not required. And that's kind of an inside joke, because we have a bunch of military guys who are like single leg amputees who wear our shoes on their prosthetic and on their regular foot, which I find very entertaining. And so to go to that higher level, we're in an interesting situation. Like most shoe companies just tell the same story as every shoe company. Here's our magic new cushioning. Try this shoe. Well, we're doing the exact opposite. We're saying, here's a wide foot-shaped toe box. That kind of makes sense. That's easy for people. Low to the ground for balance and agility. We don't have heel support or toe spring. We don't have a bunch of padding. We're telling the opposite story of what people have been hearing for 50 years. So you can't just say, hey, this is better, because they're going to come up with an argument about why they think this is better, because that's what someone told them. And that's what these multi-billion-dollar companies have been promoting. So the only way to market that way is to get people to realize or discover or recognize that what they have been told actually conflicts with what their experience is. So for example, I say to people, again, the simple one, is this the shape of your foot? They go, no. I go, well, why are you trying to squeeze your foot into something not foot shaped? They go, that doesn't make sense. Or I say, well, think about baby feet. Those little things at the end of their pudgy little legs. I go, when you watch a baby learning how to walk, it's amazing. You can see they're really trying to work how their muscles work in their feet, how their toes work. They're trying to figure out how to get all the muscles and ligaments and tendons to do all the right things. You can see that they're getting information from what they're stepping on that's going to their brain, and they're trying to get their whole body to function properly. Would you take a baby like that and put something on its foot that made it so it couldn't bend and flex and move its toes, or so that it couldn't feel the ground, or so it elevated its heel and changed its posture? And people go, well, no. I go, well, if you wouldn't do it to a baby, why are you doing it to you?
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of ways of just the simple thing. Remember being a kid and going outside on a warm summer day, and you kick off your shoes and you feel the grass between your toes, or the sand under your feet, or the water around you, depending on where you are, and you just play. And you did that till your parents dragged you home when it was so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, or the ball you're trying to kick. It's like, what'd you do for arch support then? Nothing. You were fine. What'd you do for footwear then? Nothing. You were fine. And if you watch little kids running, they have impeccable form. They land with their foot underneath their body. They have just the right amount of lean. They do it with this weird look on their face. I think it's called smiling.
Yeah.
They're having a good time. And you can do that now too. You don't have to just put in the miles. In fact, if you want to know if somebody's running barefoot or in a pair of minimalist shoes, you can spot them from 50 yards away. They don't look like they're having a bad time. And so highlighting these things that let people think about why they're doing what they're doing, and realizing that their own experience argues with the advertising messages they've been taught, kind of wakes people up and gives them the chance to start thinking about it in a way they hadn't before. And that just opens a door that we want to escort them through to show them what we're doing and let them have the experience of natural movement. Oh, now my vision, you asked.
Yes.
Look, we're just trying to change the world. It's simple. We're trying to help people rediscover that natural movement is the obvious, better, healthy choice, just the way natural food is, the way we think of natural food. And if you're not going to run in Xero shoes or minimalist shoe or barefoot, that's cool. I'm totally fine. If there's certain situations where you don't want to do that, not very many, but if you're going to be one of those people, it's like, I've got to wear this shoe for this thing. Great. But when you're not doing that thing, we have sandals and boots and shoes that you can wear off the court, off the field, off the whatever you're doing, to, again, hopefully build up that foot muscle strength, get that neural connection between the soles of your feet, where you have more nerve endings than anywhere at your fingertips and your lips and your brain, because that helps move your whole body, engage the posterior chain, which you can do better when you're working naturally. It's like, do all these things that are beneficial off the whatever, because that'll carry over onto the whatever. We have professional hockey players who say, I'm skating better than ever because I'm wearing your shoes and sandals when I'm off the court. It's made, or off the court, off the ice. It's made my feet stronger. And that actually translates to when I've got my feet bound up in my skate. And NBA players and WNBA players saying the same thing. Like, my feet have become indestructible from wearing your sandals when I'm not playing. When I'm playing, I'm in basketball shoes. And so the goal is really simple. In a way, let's turn back time to when Irene Davis at Harvard says it best. In the 70s, you couldn't find research on running injuries because there just weren't enough of them.
Yeah.
And there was still a lot of people running, but they weren't getting those injuries because they weren't in shoes that eliminate the ability for your foot to move, that squeeze your toes together, that mess with your posture, that give you cushioning that doesn't work, which means you end up sending a spike of force through your joints. So instead of using your muscles, ligaments, and tendons. So again, my goal is to make the natural movement idea the default, and anything else is the outlier instead of the other way around.
Yeah. I love it, and it makes so much sense. I mean, you talked about, basically from the ground up, right? So we're building our foot strength.
Yeah.
Our ankles are going to get stronger. Our knees are going to be more protected. Our hips, our lower back. And those are issues that everyday person deals with, and the athletes often deal with, because of footwear and then the way they train, those types of things. It's funny. I had this thought as you were talking. So whenever I was in college, we would run every single day during preseason, and I was running in padded shoes, and I would get shin splints really bad every year. And my college wrestling coach was like, hey, I want you to come in here, take off your shoes, and start running on the wrestling mats every day. And he's like, I used to do that, and it helps. And I don't think either one of us knew why it helped, right? But you're kind of digging into the wrestling mat, and you're having to strengthen all those muscles in your feet. And it would always work. I would always end up getting better doing that, which is absolutely amazing.
Well, there's another thing you do when you run on a wrestling mat. You don't massively overstride and heel strike, because that just doesn't feel right. So just getting your feet underneath your body, that's, the first thing. And then everything can follow after that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk real quick about, I want to know, I love to study people that are highly successful, and, you're still sprinting, right? Like you said, at 45, you started sprinting, you started being a competitor. What does your daily routine, your non-negotiables look like when it comes to eating and sleeping and those type of things, right? So your success.
I try to make sure I eat and sleep and pee and poop and watch TV. Those 5 things. That's my everyday. So I'm 59 and almost 59 and a half. And one of the challenges of being 59 and a half is that I can't do the kind of volume of training that I would love to do, that I imagine doing. Basically, I've got one speed day in me a week. And then, arguably I could do a tempo day, but what's the point really? If you're sprinting, you just want to practice running fast. And so that's a bit of a challenge. So the biggest thing that I'm doing when I'm not on the track is just working out and trying to do plyos and really get that posterior chain going. So I've got a home gym that I set up. I'm embarrassed when I say this, but I'll say it anyway. But we bought a house and it has a media room in the basement. So that's where the TV is. My wife and I we're a one TV family. So that's where the TV is. And I got a hot tub, and because in Colorado, you kind of have to, it's the law. And so to get either into the media room or out to the hot tub, I've got to walk through my home gym. So a couple times a day, I do something. And at the very least, I do something. I also have a broken spine. So that's relevant for this. I have a reverse hyperextension machine that I use. I've got a machine that I use for doing Nordic hamstring curl. And hold on, wait. I'm going to see if I'm going to show this video if I can. So I do Nordic hamstring curls, and I want to show this off, not to, go, hey, look how cool I am, although that's part of it, but mostly to say, hey, look what's possible if you decide to work it. And so let's see, hold on. Let's see if you can see this.
Nice. No bounce, no hands.
Yeah. So that's 59 and change, all the way down, all the way back. It took me a couple months to get there, but I get on the Nordic hamstring. I've got a 45-degree hyper that I use as well. I've got my rack, and then I also do a couple of vanity workouts. So last night was my bench press workout, which is an insane thing that I got from this guy named Nick Nilsson. So basically pick a 10 rep max and do a set of 3, rest for 10 seconds, and keep doing sets of 3 with 10-second rest until that last one is like, really hard, that last rep. Then go to sets of 2 with 10-second rest, then eventually sets of 1 with 10-second rest. And when that 1 rep is hard, rest for 20 seconds and go back to 3, and then 2, and then 1, and just keep going for like 40 minutes. And the first time I did that, it's insane. Like the last 20 minutes, just sets of 1 with 30 seconds of rest, or actually no, 20 seconds, just like, 1, 20, 1, 20, 1, 20. And the first time I did this, I emailed this guy, Nick, and I said, dude, I got veins popping out where I didn't even know I had veins. So I do that, and I'll do the flip side. I'll do a pull version of that, and I'll do a deadlift version of that. So those are fun. And then again, the plyo stuff, doing real plyos. So I'm doing, stepping off a 12 or 18 inch box and then jumping onto a 30 inch or 34 inch box. And I do a bunch of those. And I mean, whatever crosses my mind, I've got enough stuff in my home gym that every day I'll find something that I find entertaining. Oh, I've got a what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, I can do it. It's a fan bike. There we go. I've got a fan bike. And so I'll jump on there and do just a couple of, serious all out sprints, like really high intensity interval stuff. So 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off until I fall over, which is usually only about 4 of those. And then, but again, just anything to keep going.
Yeah, I have a little PTSD from Airdynes. We did a lot of hardcore training on them. Latch training is what we call it.
Yeah, those things are a beast, man. I mean, it's really unpleasant. But I realized, what I realized, I used to, when I lived in Boulder, I rode my bike everywhere, and we moved outside of town. And it occurred to me that my general conditioning had gone down because I just wasn't on my bike all the time, even though cycling and sprinting are not a great match necessarily, but my general conditioning was off. So that's why I got the fan bike, because I just needed to do something for more general conditioning.
Yeah. Now, what about recovery? So you're already doing lots of grounding, right? Walking around barefooted. What about, any cold type therapy, heat, cold, red light, anything you do special?
I try to do as little as I can get away with, because most of the research is saying anything that interferes with that mild inflammation is actually interfering with the ability for the body to recover properly. So I have a hot tub that I'm in at least once a day, but not for recovery. Just, like that's how I like to start or end my day. And next to the hot tub, I've got like this inflatable pool thing. It's not a pool. It's about, I don't know, maybe 30 inch or 24 inches in diameter, 30 inches high. It's designed, if you don't have a bathtub, you put it in your shower and fill it up. Well, I put it out with the hot tub and I filled it up with ice water. Now it's cold enough that I don't need ice water at night. It's cold enough that when I get into that thing, it's like, 45 degrees. So I do it not for the cold therapy part, but I just like, after getting out of the hot tub, I really like jumping in cold water. I was a polar bear for 17 years in a row, just, jumping into icy water every January 1st. And so I just enjoy doing it, but I don't stay in there forever. And in fact, the research that I saw, you don't want to acclimate to the cold. You want to get in there. As soon as you start shivering, get out. As soon as you stop shivering, get back in, because acclimating is the problem. And so I do that just because I enjoy it, not so much for, recovery per se.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I do some cold therapy, literally just because I like the way it makes me feel. So
yeah. Especially in the summer, man, it's just the best.
Yeah. All right. So I believe everybody has giftings, some sort of genius. And I don't want you to be humble. When I ask you that, what is your genius, man? What is your what are a couple of your giftings?
The thing that I'm really good at, there's 2 things that I'm good at. One is pattern recognition. And the other, there's 3 actually. The second thing is identifying what the underlying common factor or true thing is. So like when people are always looking for an answer for something. And I tend to look to see if there's an answer underneath that by usually checking to see if their answer can be proven false. It's like, I know everyone believes this. Let's see if that's not true. And if not, or if at least the opposite is as likely as the original, then there's going to be something underneath that's good. But the other thing is that I'm really, really good at at using both of those to help with movement patterns. So I've taught everything from running to gymnastics to Tai Chi to yoga to Zen archery to to tap dancing. Pretty much any physical thing, I'm really good at identifying what that essential thing is that makes it work, and then finding ways to help people adapt to that or learn that new thing, usually with unusual cues that no one had thought of. Like my favorite, here's an example of looking for the underlying truth. You go to a high school track meet in particular, and you look at the sprinters, and then you'll hear all the parents yelling, "Get your knees up, knees up." It's like, oh, no, it doesn't work that way. The fact that your knees come up is the effect of you hitting the ground with a lot of force at the right angle. It's not something that you actively do. By the time parents are yelling knees up, it's too late. They're not able to apply force into the ground at the right angle and the right amount of force to get that knee to come up reflexively, if you will, or reactively, if you will. And so you start looking at what's going on there. Why are they just getting weaker? And sometimes just because, you can't keep applying force indefinitely. It's just the way it is. So identifying that, or there's a variation on that. One of my best friends, the guy who actually suggested I run barefoot, we met because we had the same track coach. And I noticed one day I wasn't doing certain drills and warm-ups that the coach was recommending because I thought they were completely useless. And I noticed this other guy wasn't doing them either. And I said, "Why aren't you doing these drills?" He goes, "Because they're useless." I said, "You're my friend." So, just looking for these things like as a sprinter doing A skips and B skips and C skips, the way most running coaches teach those and the way most runners do them, it's just like a hip warm-up drill instead of what it really is, which is taking a specific phase of the sprint cycle and focusing on that to build in a movement pattern into your brain when you're not going full speed and your brain is sort of shut off and you're on autopilot. And so if you're not using those drills to simulate running, it's a waste. And people don't know that, because what happens in coaching is people you've probably seen this, they just repeat something that someone said to them, but that doesn't mean it's actually right or applicable to that person you're talking to right now. Yeah. So last story about that, I had a friend and a coach who I worked with, who at one point he said, when you're in the air in this one drill, you need to get your hips over your feet. I said, "How am I supposed to do that? I'm in the middle of the air. You can't just rearrange your body that way." What you're telling me, and you don't know it, is that I didn't take off in a way that got my hips over my feet. And he said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Yeah, see, someone just told you hips over your feet, and you were a brilliant, brilliant sprinter, and you just figured out what they meant without the two of you ever realizing that what he said had nothing to do with what you were doing, but what you ended up with was what he was going for, and he didn't know that."
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm almost the exact same way. So in coaching wrestling, I don't want to use the term outside the box, but different than a lot of coaches. But I've noticed, like you said, a lot of coaches coach exactly how they were coached, right? So if it was awesome, cool, keep it. But have you evaluated it? Have you actually looked at it and seen, is there a more efficient way to do this? Is this even make sense at all? And if it doesn't, figure out a way that doesn't.
Here's a version of this. Imagine, for the fun of it, that you came up as a coach and you just happened to have brilliantly gifted natural athletes under your command. You could say almost anything to them and they'd be good, And if you say things to them and they're brilliantly gifted, when you get other guys who show up who aren't brilliantly gifted, everything you said to that first group will probably not apply at all to the second group, and vice versa, So it's the reason that I say Jack Leonard was such a brilliant coach, again, is he figured out what you could do. I mean, our gymnastics team in junior high and high school, I don't remember if we were undefeated or not for 6 years. I think maybe we lost one meet in 6 years. And so we were pretty popular and people wanted to be part of our team. And people would come in who you would say had no discernible skill, talent, or coordination. And at the end of 3 or 6 years, these guys were really good at the thing they could be good at. Yeah. And that's a whole different mindset, to be willing to experiment and figure out what works and what doesn't work for that person, different from that next person. I mean, here's something, a testament to Jack. When he was coaching Olympians, he met a Russian coach who said, cross or interlace your fingers and see which thumb is on top. And that's going to tell you which direction you should be doing a round off, because you can either start with your left hand down or your right hand down. And he noticed that like half the girls on his team were doing the opposite of what this coach suggested was for real. And it made sense to him that if you're naturally kind of leaning in one direction or another, you want to go in that direction. So he says to these, some of them future Olympians, for the next 2 months, we're going to go back to the basics and just do round offs again. Well, you can imagine that their parents were not happy. And they weren't happy either. He did it to me when I was going into high school. He said, you got to go back to the basics and do this one thing all summer long. That's the only move you're going to do for an entire summer. And I was, of course, livid. And at the end of that summer, I was so much better than I was at the beginning. Same thing that happened with these girls he was coaching. After not very long, maybe 6 weeks, they all adapted and they were suddenly so much better. And for someone to take high performing athletes and in the middle of, a big deal part of their life, go, we got to back up. If we don't do this, it's going to be a problem. I mean, that takes a lot of cojones.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the young lady's name. The U.S. hurdler that won the Olympics this year, her coach did that to her last year during the indoor season. He said, she's a right leg lead on hurdles. And he said, you're going to lead with your left leg. And I guess she just got crushed her first couple meets and she was frustrated and like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And then now all of a sudden here she wins the Olympics. And she said it was literally one of the best things that she's ever done in training.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing thing when there's someone who is both that confident and that flexible in their thinking about coaching, and then working with an athlete who's willing to, put up with it instead of going, I'm out of here. I mean, it's a great thing.
Absolutely. So, all right, Steven, well, I always like to end our podcast episodes like this. You can answer one of these or you can answer all three. All right. And expound upon it as much as you want. I want you to tell me about a hero, hardship, and a highlight.
Wait, hold on. Hero, what was the next one?
A hero, hardship, highlight. Hero, hardship, highlight. One or a little of each.
I'm going to do a little of the first two.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you something surprising on the last one. So I don't do heroes because I don't know those people. And so there's people whose accomplishments I've admired and who, it'd be fun if I could run like that guy or lift like that guy or whatever, but that's it. I don't care after that. I've never met them. I don't know what they're like in their private life. I don't put people on pedestals. In fact, it's sort of a joke. I had a girlfriend who said, if we're ever at an event where there's some famous guy doing something, and then afterwards people are milling about and I can't find you, you're hanging out with the famous guy and he's treating you like a friend. I go, yeah, because I'm treating him like a friend. Yeah. I'm not treating him like, I'm not putting him on a pedestal. Hardship. The best thing I can say is maybe I have a brain disorder. I literally can't think of anything that happened in the past in that context. It might have been difficult at the time, but I don't see it as a hardship now. And I literally can't even remember an example of one of those. So it's kind of like my wife said to me one day, you treat people like they're your friend, even if they have done things that have screwed you over horribly in business, for example. And it's your most confusing and endearing trait because they don't understand why you're not mad at them. And I go, it wasn't personal. And so, other than the fact that they acted stupidly under this circumstance, why would I think anything differently? And, it wasn't about me, it was about them. So no harm, no foul. But I've literally had people who I see them like coming towards me on the sidewalk and I'm ready to say hi. They had cost me tens of thousands of dollars from something dumb that they had done. And they'll see me and then go to the other side of the street, which I think is really funny. It's like, I just want to say hi, man. No harm, no foul. Anyway, so those are hero and hardship. Highlights. Starting this business with my wife. I mean, we've been doing this for almost 12 years and it's the most satisfying thing I've ever experienced. She is a brilliant, wonderful, just incredible human being. And she has just flourished. I'm the product marketing guy. She's the operations finance person. And watching what she has become has been the most satisfying thing in the world. And building this with her is infinitely more satisfying than if I had done it with anybody else or alone. It just, it's made us closer. And I'm just unbearably grateful that 20 something years ago, she decided to be my friend long before we ever became a couple. And then at some point decided I was okay to go out with. And if it weren't for her, this definitely wouldn't have happened. And she thinks the same of me. We respect each other's skills and we know what swim lanes to be in and what swim lanes to not be in. And that's what's been one of the things that's really been integral in us being able to achieve what we have so far, which in our mind is still just barely getting going. We have our plans are very big and this is just the beginning.
Which just that's beautiful, by the way. I love that. But just remind me. So whenever you buy a pair of shoes from Xero, you get an email from you and it has your phone number. Yeah. I was like sitting in class and the email came through, and I looked and I was like, I'm going to go outside in a minute on my break, and I'm going to text or I'm going to call just to see if that's really your number. I didn't, but I thought about it. Is it?
It is. Yeah. I get, I put my personal phone number in a couple of places saying, look, if you have an issue, we're here, we're available. And I have maybe not many people take me up on it, but I have maybe 3 or 4 phone calls a week that start like this. Hi, this is Steven. Oh my God. And so because people don't believe that I would have done that.
Yeah, that is awesome. I assumed it was, and I was going to test it, but I decided not to. All right, last question. You got a rack of shoes behind you for those who are listening and won't be seeing this on a video. All right. What are your favorite Xero shoes besides your bare feet? If you had
it's whatever one I happen to be, grab that morning. The shoe that I wear the most often though, actually, is this one. This is the Speed Force. It's the lightest, closest to barefoot shoe that we've made. I developed this with a guy who had been at Nike for 30 years, and he we're working directly with Bill Bowerman most of the time. And he's a fan of old shoe designs that people used to make 500,000 years ago, because they had to use simple designs and simple manufacturing. And so this came out of that. It was just 3 pieces of fabric that we sewed together, and it was just a really comfortable slipper. And I went, wait, if I take a sole from our do-it-yourself sandal kit and attach it to this thing, that's going to feel great. And I had one other runner who was with me when I thought of this, and we just tried these things out, and it was incredible. It was like the closest thing to barefoot we had found. So I train in these and I compete in these. I don't wear spikes. I'm wearing just, the Xero Shoes Speed Force. And from my testing, it's no better or worse than wearing a spike, which is another interesting thing about finding those essential truths. It's like everyone says, sprinting spikes evolve because they help people run faster. No, actually. In fact, I met a guy, I haven't met him. I met this guy's daughter, which sounds weird when I say it that way. I met a woman whose dad, let's try that. Her dad has the world record in the 100-yard dash. And he has the world record still from 1971, because after that, they started doing 100 meters and they stopped running 100 yards. If you look at the shoes that he was wearing, they are certainly no high tech, whatever, the way you see now. And just to put things into the ultimate context, his world record was running a 9-second flat 100 yards. For anyone who knows sprinting, that means he probably would have run about a 9,800 meters, which means he would have won the Olympics this year.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. With all the training techniques and the shoe wear technology and all that stuff we have. Yeah, that is absolutely, which is,
yeah.
So, all right, where can we, and I'm going to put, I'll put your social media and I will put your website in the show notes, but where can we find you guys on social media?
Well, thanks. You can, of course, find us xeroshoes.com, or if your computer accidentally changes the X to a Z and you get Xero Shoes, that'll still get to us. And if you're on social media, find us at Xero Shoes or /Xero Shoes, wherever you happen to @ or /.
All right, awesome. Well, Steven, man, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom. I love it, man. I love this unique perspective and what you guys are doing with your company. So everybody listening, make sure you check out the website, grab yourself a pair of the shoes. And this has been another episode of Coach P's Perspective. May God bless you, smile upon you, and give you peace. Till next time, we're out.